In November 1932, a tiny operator called McGee Airways launched a single Stinson aircraft on routes connecting Anchorage to the remote mining camps of the Alaskan interior. The flights covered just a few hundred kilometers across hostile terrain with almost no navigation aids. Pilots called it bush flying because there was nothing else to call it. One miscalculation meant freezing to death in the wilderness. That tiny operator would eventually become Alaska Airlines. For decades since then, Alaska Airlines has built its identity around discipline, narrow-body aircraft, domestic routes, West Coast loyalty, operational simplicity, partnerships instead of widebodies. The conventional wisdom was unshakable. Alaska Airlines did not need to be a global carrier. Geography and focus always won. Then, in September 2024, Alaska completed its $1.9 billion acquisition of Hawaiian Airlines, and in May 2025, the airline launched daily widebody service from Seattle to Tokyo Narita. By 2030, Alaska expects to operate at least 12 long-haul intercontinental destinations from Seattle, using a fleet of 17 Boeing 787-9s and 24 Airbus A330s inherited from Hawaiian. But here's what makes no sense. Alaska is not United. It is not Delta. It is not American. It does not have a giant intercontinental hub like Atlanta or Newark. It did not build a wide-body fleet from scratch. It did not have a long-haul premium brand. 12 long-haul routes won't dent United's Pacific Empire or threaten Delta's long-haul dominance from the US. Yet, every major US carrier is now watching Alaska's Seattle gateway with concern. Delta has responded with new Seattle routes to Rome and Barcelona, plus a 24,000 square foot Delta One lounge at SeaTac. So, how can one of America's most disciplined narrowbody airlines suddenly threaten the global ambitions of its largest competitors? To understand why Alaska is betting its identity on long-haul routes, we need to understand why this expansion was considered illogical for so long. Alaska's historic strength was never global scale, it was focus. The airline dominated key parts of the West Coast. It had a strong Seattle identity, deep roots in the Pacific Northwest, and served California, Hawaii, Mexico, and the domestic US market. It built loyalty by being useful to local travelers. So, Alaska chose simplicity, a Boeing 737 fleet, domestic dominance, international coverage through partnerships. The airline joined oneworld in 2021, giving customers access to British Airways, Japan Airlines, Cathay Pacific, Qantas, Finnair, Iberia, Qatar Airways, and others, without Alaska needing to operate widebodies itself. This was the clean model. Alaska flew the domestic network, partners flew around the world. Alaska did not need to fly to Tokyo if it could hand you to Japan Airlines. It did not need to fly to London if British Airways could do it for them. And long-haul flying looked genuinely dangerous to that model. Widebodies require different pilots, different maintenance, different spare parts, long-haul crew planning, premium cabins, foreign sales teams, cargo capacity, and station support abroad. A failed domestic 737 route can be redeployed quickly. A failed 787 route can lose millions and is difficult to redirect. The genius of Alaska was that it knew what it was not. Long haul changes that. Then, in September 2024, Alaska completed its acquisition of Hawaiian Airlines. The deal was valued at around $1.9 billion, plus the assumption of roughly $900 million in debt. What Hawaiian gave Alaska was something it never really had: wide-body aircraft in the form of Airbus A330s and Boeing 787-9s, long-haul pilots, Pacific route experience flying to Japan, Korea, and Australia, Honolulu Asia infrastructure, international station operations, a brand with cultural depth. This is the key point. Alaska did not build a long-haul airline from zero, it bought one. Alaska did not wake up one day and decide to become international. It acquired the missing pieces. On the surface, the deal looked like a Hawaii market play. It gave Alaska dominance in Seattle, Hawaii, West Coast Hawaii, inter-island flying, and Honolulu operations. But the bigger prize was strategic optionality. Hawaiian had aircraft that could fly far beyond Hawaii. It had Boeing 787-9s, arriving from a fleet order placed years earlier. That gave Alaska an instant platform for long-haul growth. The Hawaii network was the obvious asset. The widebodies were the strategic surprise. Alaska's long-haul plan is not centered on Honolulu. It is centered on Seattle. Seattle is Alaska's home fortress. It is also one of the most valuable Pacific-facing markets in the United States. Strong tech-driven business demand from Amazon and Microsoft. High household incomes. Strong cultural and commercial links to Asia. Strong European leisure demand. A loyal Alaska customer base. Geography that points naturally across the Pacific. But Seattle is also contested. Delta has spent over a decade building SeaTac into a Pacific gateway, partly because Delta needed Seattle to feed its trans-Pacific network. The result was a slow, grinding war between Alaska and Delta for the same premium, corporate, and loyalty customers. For years, Alaska's partnership helped, but partners are not the same as your own metal. If Alaska only offered domestic flights, while Delta offered domestic plus Europe and Asia, the highest value Seattle customers would gradually drift toward Delta. Alaska's long-haul strategy is not really about becoming global everywhere. It is about making sure Seattle does not become Delta's city. Alaska's first long-haul move was not random. It used Hawaiian's existing Pacific DNA to attack Seattle's most natural international direction. Alaska launched daily Seattle to Tokyo Narita service on May 12, 2025, initially operated by Hawaiian's Airbus A330s. Seattle to Seoul Incheon followed in September 2025. Tokyo made strategic sense for 4 reasons. Hawaiian already knew the Japanese market deeply. Seattle has strong tech, business, and leisure demand to Japan. Japan offers connecting potential beyond Tokyo, and One World partner, Japan Airlines, provides unmatched connectivity out of Narita. Seoul made sense too. Korea is a major trans-Pacific market. Incheon is one of the largest connecting hubs in Asia. Seattle's tech sector has deep Korea ties. These initial routes used Hawaiian's A330s. Alaska's first long-haul move was not random. It used Hawaiian's experience to attack Seattle's most natural international direction, across the Pacific. Asia made strategic sense. Europe made it clear Alaska was no longer thinking like a regional airline. Alaska announced seasonal 787 service from Seattle to Rome beginning April 28, 2026. It then announced year-round service from Seattle to London Heathrow beginning May 21, 2026. It added a seasonal service to Reykjavik using Boeing 737 MAX 8. London Heathrow is the credibility test. Heathrow is slot-constrained, fiercely competitive, and corporate-heavy. A Seattle-London route puts Alaska directly against British Airways, Delta, and Virgin Atlantic. This is not a leisure experiment. For Alaska, London is not just a route. It is a claim that the airline belongs in the premium long-haul conversation. Rome is a different play. It is seasonal, leisure-heavy, splashy, and emotionally resonant. It tests whether Alaska's loyal Pacific Northwest customers will follow the airline across the Atlantic. London tests Alaska's business case. Rome tests whether its leisure companies will follow it across the Atlantic. Iceland is the clever smaller play. Shorter than deep Europe. Strong outdoor leisure appeal that matches Alaska's brand identity. Efficient to serve with narrow-body equipment. Iceland feels like an Alaska route, even when it is on the other side of the Atlantic. The Boeing 787-9 is central to everything. Alaska is using inherited Hawaiian 787s for long-haul growth, with 12 more on order beyond the 5 already in service. The 787 is the right aircraft because it offers long range, lower fuel burn than older widebodies, premium cabin potential, right-sized capacity around 290 seats, and significant belly cargo capability. It is not too large for a new long-haul entrant. The 787 lets Alaska test and build routes without needing 777 or A350 level demand on every flight. The 787 gives Alaska enough aircraft to be ambitious, but not so much aircraft that every route becomes a gamble. Hawaiian's 24 Airbus A330-200s serve as the bridge. They operate the early long-haul routes, while the 787 fleet scales up. They also provide operational learning. But the A330s are a bridge, not the long-haul centerpiece. The A330s let Alaska start. The 787s are what Alaska wants the strategy to become. The fleet pivot is intricate. Hawaiian's legacy A330-200 fleet stays steady at 24 aircraft through 2027 to handle core Pacific and Hawaii flying. In 2028, 4 A330s retire. Concurrently, Alaska introduces Boeing 737 MAX 10 narrowbodies on mid-demand West Coast Hawaii routes, relieving widebody pressure. The substitution frees the new 787s to focus exclusively on Seattle's global gateway. The significance of Alaska's long-haul strategy isn't about Tokyo, and it isn't really about Rome or London. It's about what carefully chosen routes can do to the assumption that long-haul flying in America requires a mega-hub and a global supercarrier identity. But Alaska's logic is strategic rather than operational. You see, Alaska doesn't attempt to replace United's global network or Delta's joint ventures. Delta will still carry millions through Atlanta. United will still dominate San Francisco Trans-Pacific. American will still anchor Dallas and Charlotte. These carriers serve passengers across the full spectrum. What Alaska is doing is creating a new premium gateway layer above what existed in Seattle before. For Seattle customers willing to pay to eliminate connections, Alaska now operates something Delta cannot fully match: a locally headquartered, deeply loyal, one-world connected, premium long-haul experience originating in their home city. The scarcity is deliberate. A focused section of routes from one strong hub creates value through coherence rather than volume. The Seattle passenger booking Alaska to London isn't just paying for transport, they're paying to stay inside the Alaska ecosystem, earn Atmos rewards on their own carrier, and skip Delta entirely. Alaska knows long-haul cannot just be a bigger version of its domestic product. The moment Alaska goes long-haul, it is no longer just selling transportation, it is selling trust for 10 hours. Alaska has launched a new global experience built around the Boeing 787. The new Suites business class product features 34 international business class seats with lie-flat configuration, multi-course dining, bedding, amenity kits, and a premium long-haul service standard. The product will be used on its long-haul routes. This matters because premium cabins drive long-haul profitability. Alaska cannot win long-haul by selling cheap economy seats. The premium tier is the entire economic argument. Long-haul is not only about routes, it is about making Alaska's loyalty program feel bigger. Long-haul flying gives Alaska aspirational redemption options on its own aircraft instead of forcing premium customers to redeem on partners. It keeps the highest value customers inside Alaska's ecosystem rather than defecting to Delta SkyMiles. Alaska is not just flying to London, it is giving its best customers a reason not to defect. Most US carriers cannot replicate Alaska's Seattle long-haul play immediately. Geography is the first barrier. United can't build a competing premium gateway in Seattle without abandoning San Francisco. American has no Pacific Northwest hub at all. Only Delta has the position to fight directly, which is why Delta is fighting hard. Loyalty is the second barrier. Alaska has spent decades building its loyalty program among Pacific Northwest customers. That loyalty doesn't transfer. The One World structural advantage matters too. While Delta relies on SkyTeam joint ventures and its own global network, Alaska connects Seattle passengers to British Airways in London and Japan Airlines in Tokyo. Alaska does not have to build a global network alone. It operates the routes that matter most and lets oneworld fill in the rest. Yet every US carrier must now account for what Alaska is demonstrating: the assumption that intercontinental flying requires a top 3 carrier identity is no longer absolute. Mid-sized carriers built on focused hubs were thought to be incapable of meaningful long-haul presence. That assumption becomes less solid when Hawaiian's widebodies can be redeployed to Seattle and combined with strong local loyalty. Delta's response has been swift and aggressive. The moment Alaska announced Rome, Delta announced its own new Seattle services to Rome and Barcelona, using Airbus A330-900 aircraft equipped with Delta One suites. Delta unveiled a 24,000-foot Delta One lounge at SeaTac to lock in premium travelers. Alaska responded by announcing a 41,000-square-foot Global Alaska Lounge in Seattle, slated for 2027, featuring multiple bars and a dedicated upper level for international suites passengers. This is not just Alaska going international, this is the Seattle War entering its wide-body phase. Delta forced the issue. Delta made Seattle international. Alaska had to decide whether to remain local in its own hometown. Alaska may have bought the aircraft, but it still has to earn the right to be a long-haul airline. The financial pressure is already visible. Q1 2026 saw a $193 million net loss, driven partly by a 17% year-over-year rise in aircraft fuel expenses, linked to Middle East geopolitical unrest. Management pulled full-year guidance and began trimming capacity during a period of heavily marketed growth. Fleet complexity has skyrocketed. Alaska spent years standardizing on a single 737 fleet after the Virgin American merger to maintain low maintenance and training costs. Now it must operate 737s, Airbus A330s, and Boeing 787s simultaneously. The risk is that Alaska becomes less simple before it becomes more global. The dual-brand strategy is complicated. Hawaiian remains as a distinct brand because of its deep cultural value in the islands. Workforce integration has been turbulent. The mechanics representation war ended in February 2026, with AMFA defeating IAM, leaving Hawaiian support staff in limbo. Hawaiian pilots have publicly expressed frustration over wide-body seniority. Hawaiian flight attendants worry their service identity, rooted in Ho'okipa hospitality, will dilute into a standardized mainland product as Alaska opens a Hawaiian flight attendant domicile in Seattle, specifically for foreign long-haul flying. Alaska probably will not become a fourth US global supercarrier. It probably does not rival United, Delta, and American across the world. The more realistic goal is dominance of one specific position. Become the dominant Seattle-based premium airline. Operate a carefully selective long-haul network. Use Hawaiian widebodies intelligently. Strengthen loyalty through aspirational redemptions. Defend Seattle aggressively against Delta. Use oneworld partners for everything else. The strategy works if Alaska stays selective. It fails if Alaska starts believing it is suddenly a global mega carrier. A dozen or so long-haul routes don't replace the great US global carriers, but they create something new. A demonstration that for certain passengers in certain markets, the elimination of the connection itself carries value worth paying for. Alaska went long-haul not because it forgot what made it successful, but because the battle for Seattle changed. The airline that once won by staying focused now believes it has to fly further to defend the focus it already has.